be a Newnan City Council member because I think I can help the community. I've been here in this community for 32 years. I actually ran for council in 2003 when Cynthia Jenkins won that office. And that was Cynthia Jenkins and Pat McKee and myself, and I was the third man on the list, so they had to do a runoff, and I put my support behind Cynthia. So in 2003 when she won that. So I just feel like maybe it's time for a change. I feel like maybe some of the communities here are not getting the attention they deserve. So that would kind of be my main goal, is to kind of bring some attention back to the 3rd District. I think number one, my belief is that these roles in government are for citizens. So I don't think you have to be an expert in anything in order to be able to do a good job. But I was on the Planning Commission for over 20 years. I know that planning is a big part of what happens in the city. I've got a lot of experience with that and making tough decisions. I understand the idea of balancing what the city needs with what the community needs. Trying to keep both of those things balanced. So I think from that perspective, I've got the qualifications. Other than that, I'm a pretty well-balanced, common sense kind of person. And so those things that I'm not an expert in, I can certainly bring my opinion and my thoughts to those items. So I think that's what we need in a person to help us as citizens in this community. Other than managing people for years, I've been a people manager for quite some time, so I understand working with individuals. I'm a huge supporter of the police department in this community. I would love to see the police department get additional support. I've been a steadfast citizen in my neighborhood. So I live in the Coletown neighborhood. I've been there for the entire 32 years I've lived here. So I've seen that neighborhood go through some changes, and right now it's going through some changes. So again, part of that is the reason that I decided, okay, somebody needs to step up. The situation that happened on Salbetti and Thompson not too long ago. The gentleman that was shot a few weeks ago, he and his dog and another woman were shot there, which there were lots of signs that there were problems going on there. And I think that a lot of that was not being paid attention to as it should have been.
Union has.
That's easy. The sense of community that's here. When I first moved here, I'd not lived in a community like this. I grew up in a resort town where it changed on a regular basis, so the community that was in that town was really small. So here it was like that kind of old-fashioned community, which I had not grown up in, but certainly had knowledge of. I'm a big history person, so I understand that there's a history of having small communities that were tight-knit. So when I moved here, I experienced that. I was like, okay, this is awesome. So that's the biggest thing. And then one of the obvious things for me, a strength of the city is our historic inventory that we have here. We have such an incredible collection of architecture and great old homes and business buildings here as well, which I feel are in jeopardy at this point, honestly. We tried many years ago on the Planning Commission to get a historic preservation ordinance passed. That did not go over well. I think we could have done better with some of the buildings that we have and homes that we have in the town that have changed a lot had we had a little bit of control over those things that are so precious to us. And again, as I mentioned before, I understand people's property rights. I'm all about people's property rights, but I also feel like when you purchase into a community, you are purchasing into a responsibility to be with your neighbors, to be responsible with your neighbors. So again, there's a balance there you have to strike between a person's property rights and being a a person in your community, a resident in your community, and having responsibility to those other people that live near you. Well, the obvious one is growth. I think everybody likes to talk about that. Growth is always a challenge. Growth is good, though. If you're not growing, that's tends to be a negative for your community. So growing is good. I think that growth gets a bad name because people complain about things changing in their neighborhood, traffic, those types of things. I always got a kind of a kick out of people that complained about traffic, and then when you ask them, were they on the road? Yeah, well, I don't understand how you can complain about traffic if you're a part of it. So I always found that kind of interesting. But I think the biggest challenge is growth. I know that the law enforcement and police department and the fire department, I know they're covering what we have going on, but I'm sure that's a regular challenge for them, is keeping up with that. And then, of course, the schools are going through that those same challenges. So growth is going to be one of those things. Again, trying to protect our historic assets that we have here, these homes that are so precious, that draw people to our community. I think that we can't treat them as if they're replaceable, because they're not. Not to mention, I cherish the effort that went into build those things, the craftsmanship and the time and the dedication of those homes. That really kind of moves me, historically. I think that from the growth standpoint, we have to rely on those ordinances that we put in place, those planning decisions that we put in place, and I think that somehow we've got to encourage more participation from the community. We've always lacked that, and I don't know that we're the only community that lacks that, but we certainly do. Whenever there's those opportunities to do those 10-year plans, those long-range plans, we get so little participation from the community, and then they're the ones that want to complain about what's going on, and we got to get more people to be engaged in that, so that, number one, they feel like they're engaged, and number two, we're getting their thoughts involved in the planning process. So if there's a way to get the community engaged more in those, I think that'll help us with the planning process. As far as the historic assets, I would love to talk about a historic preservation ordinance again. I would like to have that brought up again, just to have people, put in their 2 cents. If the entire community says, "Oh no, that's ridiculous. I don't want anybody telling me if I can, take the porch off my house or not." Okay, let's talk about that. But the fact we haven't talked about that in quite some time is surprising to me. I think for the most part, our city's moving in the right direction. Again, the reason I'm here is because I feel like we're not getting the attention in the 3rd district that we should be getting. I'm sure there are people that will argue with that. That's awesome, but I think we're moving in the right direction. I just think that my district needs more attention. That's what I'm hearing from the people that live around me, and I've been waiting for somebody to challenge Cynthia, and no one has. So I'm gonna go ahead and do it this time, other than going, I wish somebody would. But some of the projects that I think, it may seem silly, but I feel like our sidewalk system downtown needs some attention. My wife and I walk all the time, and the fact that there are places in the sidewalks where you trip and almost break your neck because the sidewalks are not repaired properly bothers me. We have people in our neighborhoods that they get around in wheelchairs and walkers and stuff, and those are challenges. There are places where cars are parked on sidewalks. It's because I like to walk the community a lot. It kind of bugs me when I feel like the cars are put in front of people, right? Your cars are parked on the sidewalk, or there's something going on, and you're like, okay, well, you have to cross the street, and it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, why aren't the cars parked in the street, or your trash parked in the street, and get off the sidewalk? Why do pedestrians need to get into the street? That is I know it's a silly, trivial little thing, but it's one of those things as I'm walking around going, this is not right. Somebody needs to pay attention to this. So those things, I already mentioned the historic aspect of town. Again, I'd like to focus on that a little bit if there's an opportunity. Well, me personally, I can't do that, but certainly I can speak to the people that are in charge to help to maybe ask them to focus on it more. So after this incident happened at Sal Beatty and Thompson Street, we had a meeting with the city officials, and suddenly we got some focus and some things were going on. We actually saw some people get pulled over for driving too fast in our community. Some other things happened, but that's already started to dissipate. So I would just ask that the city officials just kind of spread that attention around. It doesn't make any sense to me that there is a situation on a street that everyone can see, and yet it doesn't get attention. It's like, and I know we're told, oh, we're working on it. That doesn't really fly when there's problems and your neighbors around can see it, and it affects them every day, right? It affects them every day. So I think that there's an opportunity there to just, I don't want to say put pressure, but encourage attention in those areas. One of the things that was brought up in that meeting with the officials was, well, when you guys see these things, you should just call us. And I replied back, that's not my job. If it's in the street, if it's obvious to you, if the house is obviously got code problems, if there are cars that are in someone's yard that are there illegally, they don't have a tag on them, why is it my job to call you when it's your job to take care of that? You drive by it just like I do. Just do it. Just take care of those things that need to be taken care of. I think that we've lost attention to the small things, the little things that add up to the big things. And I understand as a community, we're getting larger, the bigger things become, oh, that's what I want to work on. That's where my attention is going to focus. But the small things are the things that the community sees every day, right? They're the things that bother them every day. And so I think we need to pay attention to those small things. Over on Sal Beatty, they've been working on Sal Beatty. They're correcting a drainage system over there. That's been needed to be done for a long time. But I feel like because of what happened there and us kind of saying, hey, we want to talk, they're going, okay, let's take care of some of that stuff. And I know that's not the only street. That's just the one closest to me. That's the one that's most in my focus. So those things are happening in various places around the 3rd District, I'm sure. I already mentioned I've been here for 32 years. I did grow up in North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I moved to Atlanta in 1989, and shortly thereafter moved down to Newnan. I've been in the post-production industry most of my life. I started out doing radio spots, and then started working in television. I worked, my longest gig was working at Turner Broadcasting. I worked at Turner Studios for 19 years. I left there in 2019. I took a buyout, which was awesome. And then I was asked to teach at the Georgia Film Academy. So I've been teaching at the Georgia Film Academy since then. I teach Pro Tools there and sound design. And I'm also, for the last year, I've been the head of the post-production department there. So I kind of wrangle all of the post-production teachers and make sure those systems are operating. So my last years at Turner, I managed a crew of about 25 sound designers. my last few years there, and now I'm managing a group of instructors that teach post. So I've got some working with individuals and making sure everybody's on the right track. That's kind of my work history. I mentioned before I love history. I love our old house. We live in a house on Robinson Street that was built in 1893. I loved that. I love the idea of taking care of something that someone spent so much time and effort to make awesome. We love to travel. My wife and I, we do a lot of traveling. We actually hiked the Inca Trail in 2006, actually hiked the trail where we went around and came to see Machu Picchu from the Sun Gate, which is incredible, which most people don't get to do. It was one of those trips that you just never forget. So we enjoy traveling. We collect Victorian antiques. We've got all we can handle right now. Our house is full of those. People meet me and then they go, "What? You've got a house full of antiques? That's just weird." I was between high school and starting in sound design. I was a nightclub DJ, so I've got a massive collection of vinyl from the '80s. So if you need to know anything about some old dance record from the '80s, I've got I don't know why I can't forget that stuff. Like if something comes on, I know who the artist is, what the song is, and what label they were on, and I can even tell you how many beats per minute it is. But I can't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday. So that's really weird. But anyway, I've got a huge collection of vinyl. I'm not a vinyl crazy person. I've just had it up for a long time, and it's like hard for me to separate with it. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm like I said before, I'm kind of a level, kind of down the middle kind of person, common sense kind of thing. I don't think I'm too radical in any direction. I seem to understand where people come from on both sides, and so I go, okay, I get that. I understand that. So that's kind of my story. I mentioned before I did grow up with Vanna White. Her brother's my best friend, and I actually worked with Jeff Foxworthy for 2 years. I recorded his country countdown. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but he had a countdown show on the country radio station. So I actually recorded him for 2 years, and he gave me this incredible platinum album, framed platinum album when we stopped doing that. It was super awesome. So yeah, that's kind of some silly facts about Greg Gause.
So, being as you were working in country music, did this being Alan Jackson's home, did that have anything to do with you moving here?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, absolutely. I actually, I have an aunt that lives in California, and she came out to visit my mom, and I was like, I said, Alan Jackson's from here, because she was a huge fan. She goes, "Oh, I know. I said, how about if I got you to meet his mom?" So Elizabeth Beers, who lived across the street from me, I connected her with Elizabeth Beers, and Elizabeth took her out to Alan's, and of course they sat down and they had coffee and they talked, and my aunt came back and was just beside herself that came together. And of course Elizabeth loved it, loved being able to do that, and Alan's mom was thrilled with the whole thing. So it was like everybody had a great time with that. That was fun.